welcome to another episode of Wellness with EAC. I'm your host, Nicole Guanzura, and I have the distinct privilege of being your host every single week. We film and show you a new episode every single Wednesday, and most times you're going to get a solo episode, and you and I are just going to be chatting about the things that matter to you, whatever things are going on in the world of career wellness. Or sometimes I'm bringing in experts, and we have guests that are sharing their experiences, that are telling you a little bit more about themselves. Well, this week is extra special because it is EAC's birthday, y'all. EAC turned 3, and I am so happy to be celebrating, and I want you to come on into the celebration. And today's gonna be a little bit different. I'm doing a little less of the interviewing this time. I have a very special guest who has agreed to share in the interview experience with me. I have my amazing brother who, if you have listened to the music that comes on in the beginning of the podcast and at the end, and if you liked it, it was his creative genius. And so today he agreed to come away from behind the scenes and kind of show up with me today. And I'm so grateful. We're going to dive into a little bit more behind the scenes of who am I, learn a little bit more about EAC, where we are, where we've come from, and I'm really excited about that. So if you hear another voice, another distinct voice, that's not me. TC's taking over for today. So, Ralph, I'm so excited you're here.
I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Thank you for doing this with me.
Absolutely. And honestly, I'm excited for EAC and how well the business has been going. But for those who are brand new here checking EAC out, why don't you tell us a little bit about the business?
Yes, absolutely. So there would not be a business without the brains behind the business. And so I want to tell you a little bit about me as I tell you a little bit about the business as well. So for me, as you hear on every single episode, if you're returning, if you're new, you'll hear on every episode that I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I am a career development strategist or consultant, depending on whatever you want to call it. And I'm someone who's really passionate about women's ministry. And those are just a few of the things I personally identify with because they motivate my why in what I do with my business. They motivate who I work with, and they also just stir me into kind of finding that North Star or center spot in the work that I do.
Absolutely.
So that's a little bit in terms of about me, in terms of formal specific titles. And I'm someone who has worked in higher education, early career development, business school admissions for a little over a decade now.
Oh, wow.
Which is wild to think about.
That's exciting, yeah, wow.
It's wild because one, it acknowledges that I'm aging, but it also talks about the seasoning in my experience. My background, I have a bachelor's in marketing. I have a master's in business administration, all from Radford University, which is my beloved alma mater. I spent a good bit of time over there, and now I also serve as the alumni, one of the alumni board of directors.
Oh, wow.
It's an appointed position. I started about 3 years ago, so I still get to be connected a lot in what's going on with universities outside of work.
That's fantastic.
So that's a little bit about me, kind of professional background. You'll get to know bits about me as well personally, but now the business itself. So EAC stands for Education Advancement Consulting. And what we do is exactly that. We work with universities and foundations to support especially first generation, low income, and even students coming from low support backgrounds. And by low support, I mean, if you've ever met a student who's like, I'm coming to school because mom, dad, whoever said, this is what I need to do. But my skill set's actually aligned to this, and they're not really supporting what I'm doing, or sometimes there's conflicting support. So I'm getting together with the universities, and we're providing career wellness workshops.
Wow, okay.
So our team comes and meets, say, with the Career Development Center, the Student Engagement Office. Maybe it's the first year orientation or first year support team. And we're coming together thinking about, well, your student as a whole, for them to thrive, let's talk about their mental well-being. Let's have some conversations around that. Let's talk about financial literacy. Can they manage their money? What are we setting up in place to ensure that they can do that? And the third thing, we're talking about professional development, and especially from a skills perspective. Because as they are increasing in their career and they're trying to figure out, okay, when I graduate, where am I going? Before I even graduate, how do I position myself for a leadership role on campus? How do I position myself for life after graduation or an internship in between?
Right.
We're helping them pull out those skills that they have from home, from everywhere else, and bringing them into the forefront so they can feel confident in the work that they're doing. So a lot of our work is centered around that in partnership with the school. And honestly, one of the major goals for doing that is we want to start countering the statistic that says that on average, first generation students are graduating in 6 years instead of 4. And that should not be happening. There's so many challenges that face a lot of first generation students. So we're really focusing on how do we reduce those numbers to make sure they're graduating alongside their peers. And we're also fighting against the statistics that are also bringing a lot of underserved students and early career professionals that put them in a position for underemployment in the future. We want to mitigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sounds amazing. It sounds like you guys are doing a lot of great work. I mean, honestly, this business is, I think, something that a lot of people do need. Like, there's not a lot of resources that people have, and sometimes they don't even know that there are resources like this. And
that's it.
Here we are. You've already done this business, you're growing it, and you're already becoming successful in it. But really, I want to find out, how did you even come up with this?
You know, it was really interesting. So I knew the skill set that I had, and I knew who I wanted to serve for a very long time. In my career, when I worked in business school admissions, I was one of the first people on the team that was dedicated to working with a lot of underrepresented minorities at the time. And so my goal was to ensure that as business school applicants are coming into their journey, they could figure out, well, where do I fit? How do I find my place to advance my career? And then going to work for some other organizations where I got to work with a lot of young women who are trying to figure out what are their next steps in business. And I loved it. I was working with ambassador programs, helping to build our first ambassador program at that organization, doing conferences and kind of managing from the admissions to the student system and process. And I loved it. I really come alive when I'm connecting with students. So when I decided to leave the 9 to 5, typical 9 to 5, we were going through, everybody knows that time that just recently happened and life happened and everybody's life shifted. And I decided I'm going to walk away from this because at that time, candidly, y'all know me on this podcast. I'm going to share with you. At that time, I was like, it's either my job that's going out the window or it's the mental health. So I had to make a decision. I'm still here, so it was the job that went out the window. I was like, I've got some things to do. But it really motivated me, and seeing my children, I was like, I need to be able to create something that I can have time with them, connected time with them. I can make my own schedule. My husband works in finance, so his schedule is a little more rigid than mine is. So I needed something that was going to set up my children for them to spend time with me, more time with me, and also set up something that they can look at and say, look at what mom created. Look at the brainchild behind this that's now setting us up for our future and for our children's future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Honestly, and that's what we need, right? Like with first generation people, usually there isn't that legacy that's been built out there. So really here, you're creating that platform for people to be able to build that kind of like generational wealth that goes on so that their children are taken care of. Their children's children are taken care of, which honestly, that's an amazing thing to be doing. What would you say are some of the challenges you faced and things that have helped you honestly, improve your business and really get you to where you are?
So one of the biggest challenges was trying to figure out how to run a business.
Yeah.
When I tell you I liked my every 2-week check,
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
liked the steadiness. If it didn't come, I had a word with somebody, right? It was, okay, what's going on? I know where to go.
Yeah.
But when you're walking away and you have savings dwindle.
Absolutely, yeah.
Savings dwindle.
Absolutely.
And if business is not going up, everything is just going to simultaneously go down as well. So one of the biggest challenges was adjusting now to going to one income, working through savings, and figuring out business. And in my mind, it was, okay, I'm going to try this out, see what happens, how it works.
Right.
And if it doesn't work, oh well. But also part of what folks know about me, I'm a woman of faith. So when God calls me to do something, I'm going to do it. But then also when I'm like, God, but I would rather go around this. I'd like to go to the soft life. And he's like, yes, but you have to do some things in between. So one of the challenges for me was just really learning and growing of who I am in my faith, because I needed to make sure that my faith was going to be a firm foundation. Without that, then everything else would fall apart. And when it did fall apart, I would know it's not meant to be a part of my journey.
Absolutely.
So I had to really study myself in my faith. That was one thing. And then one of the challenges was also coming to understand who around me is for me and who's against me, but are smiling about it.
And have you figured out the best way to be able to tell the difference between the two?
Discernment. Lots of wisdom and discernment.
Absolutely.
I read a lot of Proverbs for that, because one of the things I finally learned is once I was confident about myself and the work that I'm doing, then it's no longer and then somebody reminded me, and they were like, look, what are you teaching your students? What are you going out here and talking about? You need to embody that too. So I had to walk in the way. I was like, I'm walking in the way God sees me. I'm walking in the talent that I have because I have the experience. I have the education. So I need to work in confidence with that. And so when anybody's coming around me and their intentions don't align, or it seems like a good opportunity, but on the other side, it means that it's going to crumble some things for me, I had to start really praying for that discernment of it looks good, it's so tempting, but it's not good for me.
No, definitely. I hear that.
And they weren't good for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my circle just got really small and tight.
You know what? You have to do that sometimes, because in life, as we grow older and things start to happen, we do have to align in different ways. And, I love that the business is based within faith. That is something that also comes with its own structure. The business is structured, right?
Yeah.
And this is what you're also advertising to people and to the students, sort of structure for them. So it's great to know that's also happening internal with the business.
Yeah.
But even speaking with that structure, what would you say is some of your leadership styles that you think are very successful that help you with your business?
So I would say one of my favorite ways to serve as a leader, servant leadership. So for me, it's important that if I'm working with somebody, it's not just what can you do for me, what can you do to help grow this company, but as you're here, how can we also help you work towards your goals?
Absolutely.
Because when there were things that were happening in previous roles or jobs that I've had, it really helped me understand, okay, if my boss is there for me, if my company is supporting me with my initiatives, guess what? I want to work harder to help them achieve their goals. So how can I also serve you in what you're doing? Just because, yes, my title's next to our CEO and founder, that's fantastic. And there are things that I'm going to operate in, but I needed to realize that in that servant leadership, my team needs to feel that they are being empowered in the way that they need, not just, I want to empower you by sending you gifts and giving you kudos. That works for me, but for some people, they're like, don't put me in the spotlight. That makes me uncomfortable. Don't do that. So I had to really recognize that, okay, naturally, I'm inclined to serve, but also serve with wisdom, because we're also not just going to serve and allow people to, I don't know, just trample over your initiative.
Can't let them rock the boat.
Rock the boat. But also I'm going to respect you for what you have to offer to the table. Because for me to operate in my zone of genius, I need you to come in and bring in your zone of genius. So I know a little bit about what's going on over there, but I'm going to respect your skill set because I know nothing about that. I know nothing about that, right? Like, okay, you telling me this is how it works? Fine. I know enough not to be bamboozled, but I don't know everything. That's why I hired you. That's why I want to empower you to help my company grow and help your skill set grow.
Very cool, very cool. And you know what? I think there should be that separation of power sometimes in business. I know a lot of people might come in and they have their knowledge in one area, but they're quick to jump into this and say, hey, I know how to do this too, or I'll do this too, I'll help you with this. But like, you know, knowing what you're best at and focusing on that, honestly, I think like that's a great thing. You know? It helps you master your craft. Or what's the saying that they say sometimes? Jack of all trade, master of none, right? A lot of people end up falling into that. And I think just being able to give that structure for people, helping them just, you know, keep it moving and build themselves and build that structured, straightforward that says, here's what I want, here's my goals, here's my motivation. Come to EAC. They'll help you do that.
They'll help you do that. Absolutely.
I would say, okay, what other advice would you give to like students that are starting their career journey?
So right now, I know that one of the things that often happens that scares folks every 4 years, 8 years, something is going to shift in the market, right? And then with that comes a certain type of panic or anticipation. But what's always going to be the same is somebody's always going to be looking for a job. Somebody's always going to try to be bettering their career. And sometimes it's a little bit harder to do that. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to do that. So for students, one thing that is always centered, because just in these last couple of years, we've gone through the pandemic, we've gone through so much that has happened that has crippled some, that has really just like done a number to their education experiences, to their motivation. And so what I'm always saying is go back to the drawing board of your skill set. If you are sturdy in what you bring to the table, very little is going to shake you. Because one thing about life is going to continue to life. However, your skill set is going to be that grounding thing for you. So if you're like, well, I never had an internship. I get it all the time. Well, I never had an internship. I never did this. I never did that. But what did you do? Right. Can we talk about that? Can we focus on that? And from what you did do, how do you use that to translate to the experience you're going to next? And then if you feel confidence, because if you're coming to me, that's my job, right? We have that confidence. Tell me about the things that give you the heebie-jeebies. So when you go in front of an interviewer, you're not doing that. Absolutely, You're feeling confident. So I'd say just recognizing the skills. And we do, for every program we always start with a skills readiness assessment, because we want to make sure that we're meeting the students where they are. We never want to start program implementation without knowing what's going on. What's the campus environment? What's the motivation for the program? And most importantly, where are the students right now? So that skill set. Another piece of advice, once you have that confidence, is really just being really confident in reaching out to people and connecting with people. When you're networking, it's going to bring out so much more powerful results than just submitting a resume to Easy Apply. You know, there's been rumors of jobs that are not even really there, jobs that are getting first preference, of things that are happening internally. There's a lot of drama around that. So how could you talk to folks? And as a college student, it's so easy to be able to talk to folks, because then people are a little bit more likely to talk to you. Hey, I have this is so-and-so, you know, I noticed we went to the same university. This is my major. I saw this was your major too. You know, I'd love to know about your work, and maybe, you know, how you transition from your first career after graduation to where you are now. Right. So it's a lot of, yes, I want to learn, but I want to learn from you. Tell me about your experience, right? And then from there, that's how you open the door. Not everybody's going to say yes, but that's how you open the door to that person remembering you to say, oh, there's a job coming up. Can I send you a referral? I really liked, you know, what you were talking about. I really liked that experience. So it's a, you know, informational interview in many ways. Or, hey, I really like what you're doing. We don't have any jobs open right now, but I'd like to invite you to this event that we're doing. And guess what? You show up in person. They know you. The recruiter knows you. That person introduces you. So they've acted almost like a sponsor now, right? So imagine how much further that goes versus what's going through. I'm not saying don't submit job applications, because likely the recruiter will be like, this is fantastic. Can you go ahead and submit your resume into the system and let me know once that's done? But you've done that legwork of let me network. So I'd say the advice number one is to embrace your skill sets, recognize them and embrace what you do have, and then be open to what you don't know. Where I always say, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So embrace what you do know and use that to as transferable skills for what's next. And two, be confident to reach out and network. It's key. Those two things,
absolutely,
they'll get you far.
Absolutely, yeah. I think networking is definitely, I've seen it in the same industry that I'm in, especially with IT. A lot of people do apply to these jobs and try to get in, but you see the politics, from internal. I see it too. It's who you know, right? If you want to move, you want to get to the next position, it's who you know. You have to adapt to the changing market. It's forever changing, right? That's just the world we live in. You have to adapt to what's going on. And I think with you speaking on that, actually, of adapting for the students, how would you say the business has also adapted to the changing market? And how do you adapt in the future?
Yeah, so when I first started, I thought that just because my mission was the same and my why, the how of how I operate, of how we operate in general, needed to stay the same. And I had a really hard time when all of a sudden I had to shift. All of a sudden I had to pivot. But the mission has always remained the same. We are here, we want to support first generation students, we want to support low income students and professionals, even the early career professional. We're helping and collaborating with their schools, with foundations, the people that are investing in them. That has never changed. But the how, that had to shift. So for us, we're adapting to see what is the market saying. And honestly, a lot of good business advice that I've seen is the way you operate with the first client and after the first 10 clients, you're going to have to shift something. After the next 20 clients, you're going to have to shift something. Even with the podcast, I love doing the podcast for all these months, but there's things that I'm going to have to shift. I noticed YouTube will give you an option to use different covers to see which ones are going to attract better. I was listening to an episode by Jasmine Starr on just really optimizing the titles. So even though this podcast is a new introduction to how we conduct business, and I created it as a way for people to kind of get this free advice from me, right? If they're not able to be at a workshop, if they're not able to be in a VIP day with me, but they can still access me. So these are ways that I've had to adapt. And then I'm also having to adapt behind the scenes of what are other ways I need to be reaching folks? Where do the people want to be reached and where do they not want to be reached? Who's no longer serving? When I thought I was serving corporations all the time, I learned very quickly that they were not my audience. Very, very quickly. And so I had to shift my how. I had to shift my how. The career wellness workshops, as they were coming together, it started off with one workshop at a time. Now we do 6-week workshops.
Oh, wow.
We have curriculum set for 6 weeks. And that started with a speaking engagement here, an adaptation here, and this thing here. And the things we were talking about, then the core curriculum came together from the conversation. So it's always ever evolving, but the mission and the why we do the work does not, and that's what keeps us grounded. Yeah,
I think the mission statement is very important. It keeps, like you said, it keeps you grounded no matter what shifts around you. The purpose of the business is still the same, which is fantastic. I think that's also great news for people who want to come in and know that the job market is changing and that they're seeing all these things are different now. So with that, I mean, what are other ways that you think the universities that these students are coming from can support them better in order to get them ready? Let's say they don't know about EAC. They haven't found this yet. They don't know this is a thing. What's something that these students could go do from their universities? Like, speak to a counselor? Is there, some kind of program they can enlist in?
Yeah. So I'd say one of the challenges that I hear from university professionals that are working with students a lot is either the students are feeling super entitled to certain resources or certain needs, or they're kind of flying under the radar, and things are just kind of shifting and the students don't always know what's going on. Or, sometimes it's just a challenge of, is the student being persistent about that thing that's bothering them, about wanting to seek the help and support? Because sometimes it's not that the resources aren't there. It's just, are they being persistent? And I'm starting to notice an uptick in universities that are hiring student support roles, student success coaches, because they need this, right? So we're essentially coming and saying, if you know about EAC and are not in a place where you can hire in that role yet, let us be your student success coach, right? Let us help you with that. But if they don't know about us yet, or can't work with us just yet, then ensuring that they are connecting with the students where they are. There's students, there's schools who have first generation centers. There's their universities that have specialty organizations or programming that are geared for certain types of students, or certain student needs, but are they making sure that the students know about it, right? Because sometimes what happens is, the same 5 people know about this, the same 6 people know about this, they're the regulars, they show up all the time. But what about that student, that transfer student? What about the commuting student? What about that student that's just kind of falling in between? How are we making sure? So is that peer mentors that are around? Is that maybe taking some time to just do some personal outreach? I did an episode when I was sharing with schools, like, okay, when a student graduates, check in on them. It's about more than sending an email 6 months after to say, what are you doing? What job title do you have? So you can add it to your records. It's also, hey, so-and-so, even if you're doing a mail merge, right? Reach out to 30, 40, 50 students, those are the students you kept in touch with, or reach out to however many students and schedule them, maybe once a week or once a month, whatever capacity will allow you to, and just check in with them. What's going on? Do you need some support? Did you know alumni relations can help you connect to some alumni? Did you know career development can help you as an alumni with X, Y, and Z? Just those little reminders sometimes, because it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to keep up. But I think for universities as well, making sure that they are looking out for the people who are supporting the students. Because you can't pour from an empty cup. So if your student support people are burnt out, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, how do you think the experience is?
Absolutely, yes.
And even, you don't want somebody who's coming and serving the students with everything they have and then going home and are completely just not in a good place. So I think there's different ways that you can do things to meet the students' needs, but more than just programming, I think there's also things like making sure basic needs are met. So some schools also have, a number of schools have food pantries. Career closets. So food pantries if you need food, and a lot of them are not just for the students, because sometimes the staff needs it too, right? Higher ed doesn't always pay a lot. But then also career closets, because professional clothing is necessary, and if that student is if they're coming from a low income background, let's not keep them in a place where they can't improve where they're going next, right? So career closets are also helpful to help them get the dress and appropriate clothing that they need to enhance their career. So that's why we focus on career wellness. It's about the whole student. It's not just about, are they performing well at school? If they're hungry, what you're doing doesn't matter. If their mental health is not in a good place, your interview doesn't matter either. It doesn't matter if the student's not going to be here. And I've told folks that as well. I'm like, you can pursue them all you want, but if they don't have basic needs met, whatever you're trying to do, your special event, if you're not meeting their basic needs, your internship, your retention rates, they're not going to be great. If you made it a great first week experience and then they suffered throughout when the shining lights went down, doesn't matter.
Yep. That is it. And that's honestly, that is true, because a lot of times you will run into businesses or programs or things that are very, I'll say, they're not really focused on the student, right? It's kind of like something for them to say, hey, look, we are doing this, or this does exist, but it doesn't benefit the student in the end of the day. It benefits the company. It might benefit the university that they're coming from. And
Right.
honestly, what I'm hearing from you with EAC, I'm number one, I'm hearing a lot of passion. I'm hearing a lot of motivation and just that drive to help others, which I think putting the students first, putting the customer first, that's the ideal thing of any successful business.
100%.
And I'm hearing that coming from your business, even learning new things today as we go through this. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think for our viewers, we should give them 3 key takeaways from this, what they should really keep in mind and think about as they go on to their careers, and if you're a parent, what you'd want to tell your student.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I see one of the biggest takeaways is be confident in your experience. Be confident in the skill set that you have. And this is not just for the student, but also for the professional that's working with them. Because sometimes they're young professionals that are coming into their jobs, their first-time jobs, working as student support coaches, and maybe there's only like a 3-year gap between you and the students you're supporting.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it can make you feel a little minimized or feel like, am I even, yes you are. Do I even have this? You are the sauce.
Yeah.
Yes, you do have it. Go right ahead and show them what you're made of. I think it's so important to be confident in your skill set, because this is not just for your job, but this is for your life. This is for your life. You need to be confident in the skills that you have. And a lot of times we want to focus on what we don't have.
Yeah.
So let's focus on what we do have until we get to the other side, because that's going to also help that confidence. Also, in the transition time, you're going to find contentment, because we don't have enough of that. I've talked about that in a couple of episodes of, then I went and got 1 degree, then got another degree, and they're collecting dust because I never framed them, because I was looking for the next thing. And I was looking for the next thing. And I was like, oh, I need to do this. Oh, I need to go do a doctorate program. I need to do this. I'm like, did you just forget you almost failed out of grad school? Can you please just take a moment, take a breather, figure out what you need to do next? So that contentment. And then I think the second thing, second takeaway, especially if there's a school that is wanting to work with us, or a parent that is thinking about bringing us into the conversation, or maybe a company that's looking at intern training. This week is actually Intern Appreciation Week. So shout out to Intern Appreciation Week. Shout out to the interns. Interns matter. So for them, I'd also say this is a partnership, right? Every conversation we're having is really important to establish where we're at, where you're at, right? We want to meet you where you are and work in collaboration with you. It's not about coming and trying to take over your role. It's not about trying to insert us. We've worked with a university where they had a program going on, and we were a class in that program.
Oh, wow.
So students would see us at a certain time every single week, and it was consistent for them. We developed relationships with those students. We have students who are still coming to us a year later saying thank you, right? From an impact that they'd had the summer before. So that is what we're trying to do, not just about us, but help strengthen those relationships, help the student understand really what they have to offer, but also how to move around it with etiquette.
Right. That's
so, we're here to collaborate with you. So being skillful in your confidence, recognizing your skills and being confident about that. And then also just finding, looking at us from a place of a collaborative partner more than anything. And then I think the last thing would be, I think it's just so important to give yourself grace. There's a lot of pressure in a lot of this work, whether you're a business owner, whether you are a student, whether you are a higher education professional, whatever it is, just give yourself grace. There are things, there are days when I'm like, things are going really, really well, and things where I'm like, God, I don't know about this. Like, I've tried to run. I have tried to run. I have tried to run. And he was like, come on back. Yep. Come on back. I hear you. It's okay. I've got you. So I think giving yourself grace in seasons where things are just not going well. Sometimes we need to weather that storm so we can be strong enough for what's coming next.
Absolutely. I think those are 3 great takeaways from this. And honestly, it's been a pleasure here speaking with you. Being a part of the podcast. Yeah. I've been here, supporting in the background, but made my debut on here, and honestly, it was a lovely time listening to the business, and happy 3-year anniversary.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you just being a part of this conversation and motivating me and asking questions. I think it's just really awesome to be able to share this and just be a part of this community. It's so meaningful to me, and I haven't always cherished these anniversaries. So I'm like, okay, it changes. Year 3, it changes. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. And for those who are listening, and if you have been with us this entire conversation, tell us in the comments, what was your favorite part? What's your favorite takeaway, right? We've got a couple of our own takeaways, but what is your takeaway from this conversation? If you want to see this conversation with Ralph and I, it is going to be on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel so you know when it's coming live. And then not only that, we're also on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube Music. We're on Listen Notes. Actually, just go to Google and type Wellness with EAC, and you're going to find the platform that you like, that you're going to press play on and listen to this conversation. I'm going to be listening back to it because there's some things that I need to reflect on. This is such a moment for me, and I thank God for it, and I thank for my community and my village. I will always admittedly say I'm not a self-made woman. I'm not a self-made business owner at all, because the village that has brought me this far, the village that has brought me to where EAC right now, I am so eternally grateful. And so I'm appreciative of you all listening, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. And after this conversation, guess what? You either have some episodes to catch up on, or we'll see each other again next Wednesday. Until then, take care and be well.